Hey, everybody, I hope you're doing well today. Well, let's take a look at non government organizations and their role in aid to developing nations. So I just made a list here. This is from Jocelyn Blink's Course Companion about different non-government organizations. I just want to talk briefly about what they are. NGOs have come to play this huge role in international development, but it's kind of difficult to kind of get your brain around what they do because they do an enormous amount of things. They're very diverse in their size and their orientation and their outlook, their nationality, income, and their successes. And oftentimes you might think that something is really successful or a good idea from the development standpoint, but then from the reality standpoint, it might not actually work out that well. So the priorities of NGOs, however, is to promote economic development or humanitarian ideals or sustainable development. And their work might provide emergency relief in case of disasters, which is like the most obvious one. And I just listed Oxfam Care, Mercy Corps, CAFO, Greenpeace, Amnesty Internationals, and Doctors Without Borders. They're like the main, most famous ones, right? But they basically do two different things. NGOs have targeted projects, or they work to lobby on behalf of a particular interest, like poverty reduction, workers' rights, human rights, the environment. And the other thing is NGOs do one or another of these activities, and sometimes both, by raising funds and raising awareness. These organizations listed here have had an enormous impact on the global political scene as a result of just raising awareness. They don't really have any power. I mean, Amnesty International doesn't really have any power, except they can go in and find out some I don't know, atrocities that have been happening, or some sort of unsanitary conditions or inhumane conditions where people have been held, and have an enormous impact, though, on the geopolitical world, right? So by putting public pressure on governments, or, I don't know, changing the buying patterns of particular consumers. So NGOs are pretty cool organizations also because they don't really have to answer to any sort of populace, right? They can actually be very focused in what they do. They can attack poverty, or they can work in areas that official aid can't reach, or work with groups that might be isolated from official aid. And much of what is done by NGOs focuses on working directly with poor people to enhance their human needs, right? And of course, this can be in many ways: literacy programs, health programs, AIDS prevention, agricultural expansion, microcredit schemes, immunization, vocational training, anything, right? And focusing on women is another widely successful non-government organization focus area. And you'll see that the advancement of women often has multiple effect, or like almost exponential, you could maybe say, effect on the well-being of a particular place. So non-government organizations, they can be all kinds of things and do all kinds of good. And, there is a concern about them also, and I experienced this myself. I worked with the Peace Corps, which of course is not a non-government organization, it's an agency of the United States, but sort of functions completely outside the realm of U.S. political policy, at least in theory. And I was in the Dominican Republic, and I was a part of the building of a 5 mile or 8 kilometer long rural aqueduct. And the money was funded from the United States Agency for International Development, and the local people, but it was a little community of about 130 people. They did all the labor, so they built the thing. I was like a facilitator of the project, but then I was just thinking, like, this isn't necessarily good, right? Of course, great. These 130 people have water. I mean, that's critical. Like, you can't deny these people the ability to have water if the United States has an extra $17,000 to invest in water supplies for people. I mean, it leads to all of these extra benefits in terms of sanitation and on, the obvious things about water. But the thing is, like, who should really be building that aqueduct? Not like some college-educated kids who come down and facilitate the project from the United States. No, okay, I lived in the community for 2 years. I was actually a beneficiary of the water. I went from not having any running water in my little house to having some. But the thing is, shouldn't the Dominican government be doing that? Like, what would have happened if Peace Corps hadn't been working in that particular community? Would they have never gotten water? No, at some point they would have gotten water, and that probably should have happened in a more democratic, national way, and that the citizens of the Dominican Republic in this particular place called Los Maranitos go to their government and demand water. and then the government responds. And that might have taken years, but that's actually probably in the long run, you could argue, better for the Dominican Republic, because by not having to do that, by having Peace Corps there, did I contribute to the continuing dysfunction in the relationship between the Dominican government and its people? God, kinda, maybe. I'm not sure. But in the short run, of course, come on, man. Water is like critical to the well-being of society, and there are people, there are children in that community that may have not died as a result of having sanitary water. The other water supply was from a little spring that was down the hill, down a mountain quite a ways, and it was actually also embedded inside a pig pen. So they're like pigs like running around in this particular little pen, and the water source was right there because that was the water they used for the pigs, and it was also the water that everybody carried back up the hill. So, come on, you can't deny people water. But in the long run, is that better for the evolution of Dominican democracy and the empowerment of its people and the responsibility of the Dominican government to respond to the needs of their people? That's where you go round and round. But there's no doubt that non-government organizations have done an enormous amount of good in developing nations around the world. And these are some great examples you see here on the screen. All right, I hope you found this video to be helpful. We'll talk to you in a bit.